Story 1. My body wakes me up after 6 hours. I'm fine. I try to sleep in, but I cannot. Story 2. My sleeping is awful. I sleep less than 6 hours almost all the time. According to my Fitbit, there have been 3 nights since March that I have met my 8-hour goal. I do not really consume caffeine either. I hate coffee and do not drink much tea. I functioned just fine until I started my first full-time teaching role. I am struggling. That is before the term has even started. All I am doing currently is preparing. I am absolutely dreading it. I can already feel my lack of sleep dragging me down, and I am hoping I can fix it. I function, but clearly not as well as I thought. Story 3. Genetics. My dad is the same way. My sweet spot is 5 to 6.5 hours. More than 7.5 hours and I feel very groggy. Less than 4 hours and I have a hard time functioning. The problem is that when I have bouts of insomnia, my margin is almost non-existent. So when I say I don't sleep well, I am talking about 2.5 to 3 hours of sleep. Story 4. I function knowing it is temporary, and eventually my daughter will sleep through the night so we can too. Also, coffee. Story 5. Parent of 2 young children. No choice but to keep pushing on. Coffee helps. Story 6. Multiple sclerosis has made sleeping nearly impossible. I very rarely sleep more than 2 hours straight because of pain, spasms, or both. It has been like this for over a decade now. I still work full-time, you get used to it. Story 7. My secret to getting through the day with only 4 to 5 hours of sleep is called desperation. Story 8. Super sleeper. I am well rested after about 4 hours of sleep, so I typically go to sleep around 1 a.m. and wake up at 5 a.m. for work. Story 9. I can barely function after 8 hours of sleep, so I salute anyone who can work hard with less sleep. Story 10. Adderall. Sleep is the best, but it is hard as an insomniac. Story 11. I do not think I have slept more than 6 hours in 30 years. Story 12. For those who sleep less than 6 hours a day, functioning often depends on a combination of coping mechanisms and lifestyle adjustments. Some rely heavily on caffeine or energy drinks to stay alert, while others take short naps during the day to recharge. A few people naturally require less sleep, though this is rare. Many find themselves constantly tired but continue because of work, responsibilities, or simply because they have adapted to the routine over time. Story 13. Quite well. Humans are all different. It is not normal to sleep so little, but it has its advantages, like the old adage, I can get more done before noon than most people do in the entire day. Story 14. I assume I will get Alzheimer's one day just like my grandmother. I only sleep when it is very late, often when daytime has already arrived, and it is very inconvenient. I never sleep for more than 4 hours at a time. The dreams I have make me feel like I am not sleeping at all, so it is hard to figure out when I am actually dreaming versus when something is happening in reality. Story 15. I am actually doing okay. I usually do not get more than 4 hours of sleep 6 nights a week, and I get 6 to 7 hours on the occasional day. Yes, I definitely feel exhausted, but I do not have a choice. I have things to do. Story 16. Fine. But the one day a week I sleep 10 hours is glorious. Story 17. It just becomes the norm for me. Really? I am lucky to have 6 hours of sleep a night. Last night, for hours. My iron levels are in single digits too, so honestly, I have no clue. Story 18. Sheer willpower is impossible to maintain long-term for any human physiologically. It eventually leads to a crash, which often happens on the weekend. Story 19. Alcohol. Need alcohol to sleep, but sleep less because of alcohol. It's okay. I'll drink more and sleep less because of it. It's fine. I'll just drink more. Story 20. I am entirely dependent on whether I have low amounts of responsibility. I rest all day with no concerns. Sleeping just a few hours is fine. I work very hard all day, go to bed tired, and wake up tired. That is not good. Both situations occur. Story 21. Some days are just not good, and I have to catch up on the weekend. Story 22. Poorly, but you do get used to it. You come to terms with the fact that your brain will not function as well as when you were getting decent sleep. It does make those days when you get restful sleep feel like you're on top of the world, though. I relied heavily on caffeine to survive and function until I was diagnosed with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Now I focus more on hydration and electrolyte balance. When my potassium and sodium levels drop, the brain fog gets really bad, so maintaining these levels helps keep my energy and alertness up. Story 23. My friend is a nurse with many night shifts. I have noticed that she has some memory impairments. Story 24. Slow memory loss, running on fumes. Body moves on automatic at work, but interactions with others are on hold since I get grumpy easily. Feeling more depressed than usual. Story 25. Well, it was easier when I was younger, but now it is kind of frustrating. Story 26. During school, my usual sleep time is less than 2 hours a day, and I tend to feel fine. I guess it is because I am so worried about everything else that is going on. I assumed that 4 to 6 hours a day was the realistic norm. Story 27. High-functioning attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and vivance. I drink a lot of coffee and I am hyperactive. Story 28. I either sleep 6 hours a day or 16 hours a day, and my ability to function remains at rock bottom either way. Story 29. Coffee, music, and stress. In other words, I do not function. I am just alive. Story 30. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism make sure I do not. There is no point in sleeping if I cannot even get a handle on anything else. Story 31. It is either function or jump in front of a train. Take your pick. Story 32. I go to bed late because I become anxious when I try to fall asleep since it is just me and my thoughts. I wake up early because I feel like I am wasting the day by sleeping in. Story 33. Full survival mode accompanied by fatigue and the essence of my life, creamy milk. Story 34. It is definitely not on purpose. I usually crash hard around 3 p.m. and have a 10-minute power nap or rest. Once I have that, I am good to go again. Story 35. 3 energy drinks a day and incredibly terrible mood swings. Story 36. With duct tape, glitter, and Jesus. I am sometimes quite literally ripping at the seams, sleepy as heck, but I rotate some green tea and some matcha so it is healthier than coffee during the day, and make sure to take my vitamins. I take hormones for endometriosis, which causes severe insomnia and depression. Story 37. Through the power of caffeine, L-citrulline, vivance, and pure unbridled spite. Story 38. I basically run on pure hatred for being awake at this point. I cannot have caffeine due to heart problems, but even if I did, it would make me more tired than I would be without it since it overworks my heart and wears me out quickly. I also have an easier time falling asleep for a nap than actually going to bed. However, if I take a nap, I end up going to bed even later than I normally would. I have definitely passed out at work once or twice. Story 39. I used to do this. Your body gets used to being exhausted, but you are not healthy. Once you have conditioned your body to only receiving about 5 hours of sleep a day, you have to find fuel some other way, whether it is coffee, sugar, or both. I used to go to work, then enjoy the nightlife, only to be done by 6 a.m. and go to work again at 11 a.m. Looking back now, I just do not know how I did that. Story 40. I sometimes go a week without making double digits, methamphetamine user. Story 41. I have chronic insomnia and bipolar disorder. If I sleep less than 6 hours one night, I am still fairly functional the next day, though a bit headachy. However, if I get less than 6 hours for a second night in a row, I feel dramatically worse. 3 or more nights in a row of insufficient sleep can trigger a bipolar episode and negatively affect the next 2 months or more of my life. Sleep is very important for people with bipolar disorder, and missing too much of it is very harmful. I usually take a sedative to help me sleep, but sometimes it just does not work. My mother used to joke that she was going to smack me over the head with a hammer to get me to sleep. The image of my tiny mother with a giant hammer larger than her often makes me giggle when I cannot sleep and helps me feel a bit better. Story 42. We are simply hanging on to the last rope of survival adenosine triphosphate. Story 43. I sleep 3 to 4 hours per day. I am a virtual assistant with multiple jobs. What makes me function? I look at my payslip. Story 44. Hi. Post-traumatic stress disorder keeps me from sleeping, so I would say anxiety helps keep me going. I highly do not recommend it. I would give a lot to be tired in the evening again and get through more than 3 to 4 hours of sleep. I am here, but I am not here. Story 45. Money and boredom. I know we need to have a life and work balance, but without the money that comes from work, there is no life you can live. I know what it is like to not have money. Sleeping for more than 6 hours just hurts my back and neck more. Story 46. I went from sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night to now 10 to 12 hours, and it still isn't enough. I hate it here. Does anyone have any cheat codes for this level? Story 47. I actually function best on 5 hours of sleep. I do drink about 4 cups of coffee a day, though. Story 48. Is this total or straight? I am working on a cruise ship, currently on breakfast duty. I usually get around 1 to 2 hours nap, then 4 to 5 hours night sleep. No day off, so this cycle will last around 8 to 9 months. Right now, I am at 5.5 months, and so far it has been manageable. I do not know if it is, because of habit already and my body is used to it, but I do not feel any major decline in my health, even if my eating behavior can be considered unhealthy. I probably have not had a proper meal for weeks and am just eating food here and there during my duty, almost never sitting down to eat a proper meal. I am probably losing about 20 pounds during these 5.5 months, to be honest. On some days I feel sluggish, and that is when I try to get some substantial food with more starch or sugar. But I drink quite a lot of water. Story 49. Exceptionally well, averaging 5 hours a night. I fall asleep at 11 p.m. and wake up at 4 a.m. to start work. Story 50. About 20% of the population need less than 5 hours of sleep, if I remember correctly. It is uncommon, but it does happen. Story 51. Average 5 hours, and it is especially difficult because I am working 7 days this week. It is really not good for health. It is genuinely a struggle with a 12-hour shift as well. Story 52. Friend, if you have a way to sleep a full 6 hours without your bladder waking you, please do share. Story 53. They might be okay for years, but eventually the health problems will start to take their toll. Story 54. I function normally, thanks, or at least I think I do. I just tend to take power naps from time to time. Story 55. I never really got a lot of sleep, so I think my body is used to the abuse. I am 36, and I can feel it catching up with me. Story 56. Sleeping pretty well without any caffeine or naps. Usually get 4.5 to 6 hours per night. Story 57. Only 5 times a week, nights 6 and 7. Usually make it up and sleep for about 8 hours. Story 58. The first half of the day I struggle to stay awake. It is fine as long as you are standing or walking. When I sit down, I sometimes have to take care not to doze off. In the afternoon, it gets better. Story 59. Everybody is different. If I get more than 6 to 7 hours of sleep, I have trouble sleeping the next night. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama famously only slept 5 hours per night. Thomas Edison only slept 3 to 4 hours per night. Bill Clinton claims a professor at Georgetown told him, "Great men require less sleep." Story 60. My husband usually gets 6 to 7 hours of sleep each night, sometimes less. He drinks a lot of coffee and Coca-Cola when the coffee runs out. Story 61. I get about 5 hours of sleep a night. After that, my body wakes me up to either urinate or to stay awake. Then I run my business for about 12 hours each day. The strange thing is, I am not a morning person, yet I function fine. Story 62. On average, I get 5 to 6 hours of sleep and wake up naturally between 5 and 5:30, whether for work or a day off. To be honest, I function very well. I used to need 8 hours of sleep. When I had a child, my body naturally adjusted to less sleep and has now settled into a cycle of needing only a relatively smaller amount to function properly. There are occasional days when I sleep in, but that is usually me waking up at my normal time and deciding to go back to sleep for another couple of hours because I can. Story 63. Very efficiently, but I get mood swings. You get used to operating under any type of strain, so it eventually becomes normal. It's not getting solid deep sleep that really ruins the day. When you sleep for an hour at a time, wake up, fall back asleep, and repeat. Story 64. You need more than 6 hours of sleep. Please don't do it for too long. We are not all Nikola Tesla. We can't function on 3 hours of sleep and still communicate effectively. Story 65. Each human is different. Some people genuinely can do that, or even a lot less in some extremely rare cases. That being said, many people also do not sleep enough. Story 66. It is easier than you think if you go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Story 67. Works pretty well if you are talking about less than 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep. A 10-minute nap at lunchtime should help. However, if it is less than 6 hours and I do not get midday naps, then it will be quite bad. Story 68. 4 hours overnight, 1 to 2 hours during the day between a couple of naps. I feel fine. Story 69. I have found I need less sleep as I have gotten older. My health tracker shows 5.5 hours on average. As far as functioning goes, 1 venti latte on my way to work, and that is the end of the caffeine for the day. After that, it is just water and keep moving. Story 70. 6 hours is more than enough, at least for me. My body automatically wakes up after that and will not go back to sleep no matter what I try. All systems normal. Story 71. In bed at 10 p.m. and up at 4 a.m. It is difficult, but you have to earn that money. Life is good, and the job is good. Pays to have a good work ethic. Enjoy your weekends and vacations. You reap what you sow. Story 72. 2 energy drinks and 4 cups of coffee. Luckily, I only work 14 days out of the month. Story 73. I would say like everybody else does. I have been doing it for so long that it is just normal. Story 74. I have to make up for my poor decisions somehow. Just a tip. Do not be $100,000 in debt right out of high school. Also, do not let your family talk you into getting an expensive vehicle. Get a used car and do not listen to what they say. Story 75. I have a 65-year-old coworker who says he sleeps 3 to 4 hours and yet somehow he is the best worker and has the most energy. I do not understand how. Story 76. I am lucky to sleep more than 4 hours a night. I am 37 and I look 50. When I was 21, I had a hard time convincing people I was even 18. That is how drastically not sleeping has affected me. I get through the day with a series of nicotine, coffee, and energy drink resupplies. My main food group is foods with sugar. Story 77. Please tell me how to sleep better. I fall asleep easily but wake up after 4 to 5 hours, and the ringing in my ears keeps me awake. Story 78. Soft, fragile, safe, abounding, head, deer, groovy, oatmeal, bag, punch. Story 79. Lots of coffee, with an occasional 10-minute power nap if possible. Story 80. My work responsibilities do not require much focus or attention. I am half asleep most of the time, especially when working from home. Story 81. That's how it was for the first year after having my children. It was difficult. I felt like I wasn't functioning to my full potential. It has been 3 years since I gave birth to my youngest, and I finally feel like I'm better. Story 82. Easily. It is no problem whatsoever. A 20-minute nap every now and then is nice too, though not needed. Story 83. I have chronic pain that wakes me up if my children do not get to me first. I feel like a sports car that can go really fast but has smoke coming out of the hood. With caffeine and anger, all things are possible. Story 84. If I sleep too much, I immediately develop clinical depression. Story 85. In my 20s and 30s, I could do this without an issue. Turns out I was bipolar. Now, in my 40s, I am in bed by 9 p.m. Story 86. My schedule constantly changes, so I get between 5 to 6 hours of sleep, sometimes 4 or less depending on if I keep waking up during the night or if someone wakes me. I rely heavily on caffeine, which is starting not to work for me, and naps. 2-hour naps make a big difference. Story 87. Okay, enough. I wish I could sleep more, but I just wake up after about 5.5 hours, no matter how early I go to bed. Story 88. I would say 6 hours is average for me. I fall asleep when I am tired, usually around 11 p.m., and wake up naturally anywhere from 4:30 to 5:30 a.m. No alarms or forced awakening, just my rhythm, I guess. I do not take naps. Sometimes I get tired in the evening and fall asleep while watching television. I get up and go back to bed, and either I stay awake for a few hours, or if I go to sleep early, like 9:30 or 10 p.m., I will wake up even earlier than my usual time, usually after 6 hours. I limit caffeine to before noon and do not drink alcohol or use drugs. Still, I do not sleep longer. Story 89. I sleep 4 hours a night and am energetic all day. I just have a lot of energy and my body naturally wakes up after 4 hours. I normally wake up at 4 a.m., go for a 2-hour run, then stay up to work and live until midnight. Then I sleep until 4 a.m., but it is still hard to fall asleep. Story 90. To be honest, I don't know. I usually get about 4 hours of sleep every night. I work manual labor, but around 4 hours is all I get and seem to need. I drink a lot of water and have about 1 meal a day. I honestly don't understand it, but there you are. Story 91. As a younger man, I woke up crisp and sharper after 4 to 5 hours of sleep. I kept moving at work and stayed busy. Now, in my 50s, if I sleep only 4 to 5 hours, I rely on coffee and need many breaks. Story 92. Best I can do at a stretch is 4 hours. Then I have to get up for an hour or two, and then I try to take a nap before I get ready for work. That's just how I sleep. I go to bed at 10 p.m., get up at 2 a.m., stay up a couple of hours, get up again at about 6 a.m., and then dawdle around. I get super tired for a bit, then start work. I'm not tired at all throughout the day. Repeat. That's been my sleep cycle since about 1990. It must be nice to be able to sleep. I just don't. Once the sun is up, I'm up. That's the bottom line. I can nap really well though. At lunch, I can lean back in a chair and sleep for 20 minutes if I'm really tired. I can do that, so it's helpful. Not sleeping runs in my family. My mom, my grandma, me, and my oldest daughter. Sleeping just isn't in the cards. Bottom line, if I'm up, I'm up. If I'm out, I'm out. When I do sleep, it's solid sleep. Proper rapid eye movement, then deep sleep, then rapid eye movement, then awake. It's pretty clockwork. Story 93. I've always been the first one up since I was a kid. A good night for me is 4 to 6 hours. I get off work at 11 p.m. and go to bed at 3 or 4 a.m. I am up to trade options when the market opens. It is very difficult when you have a significant other. Story 94. Operated normally for years. Went to the gym, worked a demanding job with about 5 hours of sleep per night. I can't remember a time I slept more than that. Recently, I went to the doctor because I thought I had low testosterone due to unexplained weight gain and feeling listless. I changed some habits, started getting 7.5 hours of sleep per night. The bad weight came off and I have much more energy. Story 95. My average is around 6 hours. I don't drink tea or coffee. If I drink fizzy drinks, it's the zero sugar or maximum sugar varieties. I'd love to sleep more, but my body wakes me up. I can go to bed at 2 or 3 a.m. and still wake up at 6. I've gotten up no later than 6 for work for about 30 years, since my first paper round. I'm also a morning person, so I wake up happy and cheerful, or irritating as my wife calls it. She is the polar opposite, can have 10 hours and still be grumpy and tired. Story 96. 5.5 to 6 hours of night sleep, plus a 30-minute nap after work works really well for me. If I try to sleep more than 8 hours, I feel very dizzy and tired. Story 97. I am 50 years old and have had trouble sleeping for over 40 years. I no longer function well. I am in chronic pain, and paying attention is difficult. I am always exhausted. Story 98. There is at least one night every week when I make up for the lack of sleep by sleeping for 10 to 11 hours. Story 99. I do not know. The same as anyone else. I am just taking it one day at a time. Story 100. Not smoothly. Coffee and exercise to get yourself going. Story 101. You are not on medication, and I admire you for it because on medication you need more sleep. Story 102. I don't seem to realize that I need it. I can wake up very early with no problem, and I don't drink coffee. I don't really seem tired. I imagine it will catch up to me. I have realized I am not very aware of my body in general. I don't realize when I am hungry, thirsty, hot, or dehydrated. This is definitely a bad thing, and I hope to pay better attention to my body soon. Story 103. Pretty well. I have done it for about 20 years or more now. A nice 5 hours feels great. Story 104. Caffeine and vitamins, and I'm pretty sure the vitamins are not actually doing anything to help. Story 105. I am 64 years old. I usually sleep 4 to 5 hours a night, even on weekends. I only have 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day. I drive the whole day from 7 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. I get drowsy in the afternoon sometimes and fall asleep while trying to watch TV or a movie on the couch. Story 106. Not good at all. I am exhausted when I wake up. I am developing anxiety as we speak, and my fuse is short. I have 1 more day to go before I have a few days off. Then I can just sleep and restart the process again. Story 107. Some people need less sleep. I was on the staff of a Commodore who got 4 to 4.5 hours per night and functioned fine. Her staff had to work in shifts to keep up with her. She is now the chief of naval operations. Story 108. Make myself a robot. Automatically get up and do what I have to. You do not even realize it, and after a while you just let your body do its regular routine. Until you fully wake up. Story 109. I am actively trying to change my sleep patterns. I notice my memory is not as good as it was. Story 110. Not getting angry, enjoying a nice salad for lunch daily, 2 beers after work. Gummy at night while relaxing. I emphasize not getting angry at traffic, at work, at the baby, at my spouse. Let it all slide away and relax. Anger is the most terrible thing. That said, I strongly oppose Make America Great Again. Story 111. Good strong coffee first thing every day. I average 5 to 6 hours of sleep but often wake up and can't get back to sleep, ending up with 4 hours. Those days are difficult. Story 112. It is normal for my body to wake me up on my days off as if I am getting up for work, unless you take a stimulant, which is not good in the long run to stay awake without sleep. Story 113. I do not usually do this, but I have spent all week on 4 hours of sleep or less per day and have been mostly fine, thanks to Modafinil. This medication is impressive, but I would not expect things to go this smoothly long term. Hopefully I will sleep tonight. Story 114. I do not, at least not in any way that is healthy. I started taking magnesium because I realized I was deficient, and my insomnia is gone. My body is begging for sleep so much that I even have rapid eye movement rebound. I think more clearly and act with more logic, reason, and far less anxiety than I ever did when I was sleep deprived. That was not functioning. It was slow torture. Story 115. I inadvertently realized sleep cycles make a difference. I cannot yet control exactly how to sleep or wake naturally according to sleep cycles. Last week, I slept late, past midnight. Then I ended up waking up naturally at around 4:30 a.m. It was random, but I realized it was probably related to sleep cycles. Each sleep cycle is about 1.5 hours. Waking up at 4:30 a.m. was probably after 2 or 3 sleep cycles. Story 116. Taking naps throughout the day and having a job that allows it are beneficial. Coffee or energy drinks help when there is no time to nap. Story 117. I need much less sleep when I meditate frequently. It improves the quality of my sleep significantly. It is incredible. Story 118. Not sure. I just keep busy and hopefully I will fall asleep at some point. Story 119. I don't know, but I am constantly sleepy. I am trying to improve, by the way. Story 120. There is a small percentage of the population that can operate with almost no sleep. It is genetic and very rare. On the other hand, some people do not have a choice but to do so due to obligations. Technically, you risk your health by sleeping less than 6 hours each night. Story 121. I am not sure about others, but I actually do not function. I barely live and I feel like a zombie. Story 122. I hate sleeping. I sleep as little as possible. I usually get 4 to 5 hours a night. I do not want to spend a third of my life doing nothing. I function just fine. I have been this way as long as I can remember. I am in my 50s now and I have not seen a need to increase it. Story 123. We just trudge through each day because we have to. Then, about the time I am doing dishes, I am already dreading tomorrow. Story 124. Despite everything, I want time to enjoy nighttime and the quiet it brings. How dare my body try to pull that enjoyment from me? Story 125. Well, you just kind of hate life. On average, I am a very happy person. I love to joke around, give back, raise people up, and teach others what I know. When I am below average, as in not getting enough sleep, I still do those things because that is who I am and people are used to that. But instead of being happy and fulfilled, I hate everything. So basically, I just keep being me, and sometimes it is genuine and sometimes it is not. Story 126. Consuming a lot of caffeine, feeling anger, and experiencing dizziness throughout the day. By bedtime, my brain starts stressing about what I should have done, making it harder to fall asleep. Story 127. I did 4 hours a night through my 20s and drifted to 6 hours through my 30s. I am getting closer to 8 hours now in my 40s. This is a 100% natural pattern. Story 128. I used to be able to function thanks to a large amount of caffeine, but now that barely works. I try to get 8 hours of sleep now. Story 129. Honestly, I have no idea how I manage. Probably 4 to 5 hours of poor sleep or insomnia, and I do not drink coffee either. Literally, I have no idea how I do it. Story 130. I generally run on 4 to 5 hours maximum. It is probably slowly harming me, but I have been doing it for years without any issues. I also cut out caffeine a few months ago and have not noticed any difference. Story 131. You get used to it. I developed a strange insomnia about 5 years ago, where I physically cannot sleep longer than an hour, sometimes 2, usually an hour. I am just that manic. My mind races all day, then I get so tired I cannot focus, so I crawl into bed. 1 hour later I jump up and get back to the computer. It is always nice because in that hour I have received a few notifications. Other than that, it can be tiring. I have been told that the brain adjusts to give you rapid eye movement sleep during that hour, so it is not deadly. I probably get 10 hours a week. Story 132. Out of necessity, I am personally a night owl, but I have a child who must be up at 5:30 a.m. for school. He gets on his bus and I get on my struggle bus. After a day of work, school activities, and household tasks, I wind down at 10 p.m. for a couple of hours. As we approach midnight, I collapse in exhaustion to repeat the process all over again. On weekends, however, I try to sleep as much as possible. It is not much, but definitely a few hours more than on weekdays. Story 133. Pretty well, actually. Strangely, I think my body has mostly gotten used to 5 to 6 hours of sleep a day. On the rare occasion that I get to sleep as long as I want, I actually feel more tired than when I only get about 5.5 hours. I am much more productive on around 6 hours than more. Story 134. It is how my body operates and always has. I hated spending the night at a friend's place because I would wake up at 6 to 7 in the morning and sit there for 3 hours waiting for them to wake up. I find it nice and it allows me to be productive as an adult. Story 135. When I do get less, it doesn't really bother me, honestly. Story 136. I work many hours every day. I refuse to allow my days to become a monotonous blur of work, sleep, work, sleep, work, rest, sleep. So I stay up doing the things I like and sacrifice some sleep time. Story 137. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and chronic fatigue. I feel tired no matter what I do or how many hours I sleep, so it does not really matter how much I get. I typically try for 5 to 6 hours a night on days that I work, and 10 or more on days that I do not. Getting up and going is a delicate combination of vivance and enough caffeine to kill a horse. Story 138. Did that frequently in the army. Caffeine. Lots of caffeine. Story 139. I have always slept around 6 hours per day without having any problems, although actually wanting to get out of bed can be a different challenge. I almost always wake up before the alarm goes off, even if I go to bed a little later. It is only if I have a couple of days with less than 6 hours that I start feeling it. I am not sure if it is genetic or something else. I remember reading an article about how some people do not need as much sleep for some reason. Story 140. Honestly, I have no idea. I feel it will destroy me in the long run. Story 141. As someone who has insomnia lately and does not drink coffee, I have hopes and dreams of overcoming the challenges of adulthood. Story 142. I didn't know I was only getting about 2 to 4 hours of sleep at night until I got a smartwatch and started monitoring my sleep. Most of my sleep is light sleep, so I am somewhat awake. Although I get 2 hours of rapid eye movement sleep, and my dreams are very vivid. I try to go to sleep and get at least 8 hours, but my body and mind do not allow me. I think my biggest struggle is my memory. I don't seem to remember things. When I get a full night of sleep, I have no problem remembering things. Story 143. I used to be able to sleep in before I was in the infantry. Now, regardless of whether I go to bed at 8 or midnight, I still wake up just before 5. I wish the trazodone was stronger, but that is just me. Story 144. Just barely. Caffeine in the morning helps a lot. I remind myself that it is only a temporary phase in my young children's sleeping patterns. Story 145. At first, not well. But now, 2 hours maximum, usually 30 minutes. And I wake up tired. The moment I decide to get up, I feel fine. After about 2 weeks of this, brain fog hits, and I cannot think clearly. My eyes become dry and sore. I have to go to bed and rest. If nothing else, I eventually pass out and have a very broken 4 to 5 hours of sleep, and the cycle starts again. Otherwise, I tend to be okay. Story 146. I got a maximum of 4 hours of sleep a day for 2 years out of necessity, and then the habit stuck with me. I worked a full-time office job, a part-time job, and then drove 90 minutes 5 nights a week to a nighttime Master of Business Administration program. I had a wife and 2 kids under 3 at the time. Honestly, my wife was the all-star. I just had to work hard for a couple of years. My wife had to keep the young children alive almost exclusively by herself since I was never home. I get more sleep now, about 6 hours, but for well over a decade I averaged about 4 hours a night. Story 147. I only sleep about 5 to 6 hours on workdays since I work at night. I am sometimes sleepy but still able to handle it. The good thing is I sleep more during the weekend. Story 148. It is just normal for me. I am older now and sometimes sleep for 6 hours, but until I turned 50, a total of 4 hours, basically divided into 4 or 5 naps, was fine for me. Story 149. I sleep less than 6 hours and do not consume caffeine or sugary drinks. I exercise as soon as I wake up to feel energized throughout the day and take a 3-mile walk or jog at night to become tired enough for deep sleep. Story 150. I function normally. If you rub your eyes hard enough and wash your face in the morning, you will be awake. Story 151. Less than 5 hours a day for years. I am still running well. I have time for work and the gym. I have a strong sexual drive. I do not know how I function. Story 152. I have a good sleep schedule now and actually function worse than when I slept 3 to 4 hours a night. I sleep 6 or more hours now, but I am always groggy and need a nap during lunch hours. Story 153. I sleep 6 hours per day. I go to bed at 1 a.m. and wake up at 7 a.m. I have an alarm set for 7:30 a.m., but I never need to use it. I wake up anywhere from 6:45 to 7 a.m., and I am fully alert and ready for the day. Story 154. Coffee, sugar, and being on my feet for the majority of the day. Story 155. Drugs first, coffee second. I'm hoping I'll make it to retirement though. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.